cold morning breeze greeted Ethan as he stepped outside, locking the door quietly behind him. The air smelled faintly of rain from the night before, and the pavement still glistened, reflecting the sleepy neighborhood like a dim mirror. He pulled up his hood, shoved his hands into his pockets, and started down the block. He knew he should still be exhausted. After all, raising a 7-year-old alone while juggling 3 part-time jobs didn't leave much room for rest. But this morning, ritual it mattered, more than he liked to admit. At the corner, as always, Mr. Alden stood hunched near the bus stop, gripping his cane with thin, trembling fingers. His wool coat hung too loosely on his frame, as if his body had shrunk faster than he could keep up with. His silver hair, wild like soft winter grass, caught the first morning rays.
This looks
early today, Ethan called gently. The old man lifted his head, his cloudy eyes brightening the moment he recognized him. Or maybe you're late, he joked, though his voice scratched like dry leaves. Ethan smiled. Traffic, he said, though the streets were empty. They both knew it wasn't about punctuality. It was about presence. He stepped in front of Mr. Alden, crouched, and presented his back.
Enjoy your
All right, up you go. Every morning for the past 3 months, Ethan carried him down the long hill toward the bakery, where the old man liked to buy a single warm roll. A fall had weakened Mr. Alden's hip, and though the doctor insisted he use a walker or wheelchair, the old man refused. I don't want wheels, he grumbled the first week. I want legs, even if they're borrowed ones. Today, Mr. Alden hesitated a little before climbing on. His breath was shaky. Thank you, son, he murmured as Ethan hoisted him up. Not a problem, Ethan said, though the weight pressed into his shoulders, reminding him he hadn't eaten breakfast again. Still, there was something grounding about the old man's fragile arms around his neck. A sense that strength wasn't just muscle. Sometimes it was choosing to show up for someone who would fall without you.
This looks delicious.
If you were standing here in this quiet morning, the narration drifted inward for a breath. What would you have done? Be honest. Write your answer below. And if you don't have the words, tapping like is your way of saying compassion still counts. They moved slowly down Willow Street, passing rows of small houses and manicured lawns. Birds hopped through puddles, scattering droplets that sparkled briefly before disappearing. Ethan's boots splashed through them too, but Mr. Alden didn't complain. He simply hummed, an old melody that sounded like memories wrapped in sound. You carry me smoother than my son ever did, Mr. Alden joked suddenly. Ethan chuckled. I didn't know you had a son.
You're welcome.
The old man stiffened slightly. We don't talk. It's been years. Ethan didn't push. Life had taught him when silence needed to stay untouched. When they reached the bakery, Ethan lowered him carefully onto a bench. Warm air drifted out each time the door opened, carrying the smell of fresh bread and butter. Mr. Alden always insisted on buying Ethan something, and Ethan always declined, until the old man would scold him, calling him stubborn as rust. Today was no different. You'll take the coffee, Mr. Alden warned, wagging a bony finger. Fine, Ethan surrendered with a grin, but only because your threats are terrifying. Inside, the bakery lights were soft and amber, coating everything in a morning glow. Ethan helped the old man choose his roll, a golden one sprinkled with sesame. Then guided him back outside where they sat for a few minutes, letting the world wake up around them. Do you ever think, Mr. Alden said quietly, that some people appear in our lives at the exact moment we break without them? Ethan stared at him, surprised. Yeah, I guess I do. He didn't tell the old man that the first morning he'd found him struggling on the hill, Ethan himself had been on the edge, drowning in overdue bills, worn out by exhaustion, terrified of failing Lily. Helping someone weaker than him had felt like a rope thrown into his dark water. But before Ethan could say any of this, Mr. Alden winced and pressed a hand to his hip. I should get home, he murmured. Ethan stood at once. I'll walk you. The old man tried to protest, but a sharp pain silenced him. Ethan knelt again, letting him climb onto his back for the return trip. Step by step, the weight fell heavier, not physically, but in a way that hinted something wasn't right. The old man's breathing grew faint, uneven. Almost there, Ethan whispered. They reached the top of the hill, where morning traffic was finally beginning to stir. Ethan carefully set him down by a small, aging porch.
Thank you, son.
The paint peeled like curl petals, and the windows fogged with condensation. "You rest,"
You're
Ethan
welcome.
said, steadying him. "I'll check on you later." Mr. Alden nodded, though his eyes seemed far away, drifting somewhere Ethan couldn't follow. As Ethan turned to leave, a strange unease trailed him, the kind that clings to your ribs without naming itself.
Thank you. This looks
It stayed with him even after he returned home, even after Lily ran into his arms, even after the morning melted into routine. He didn't know why, but the next day would explain everything, and it would begin with lawyers and bodyguards and a truth he was never prepared to hear. The next morning, Ethan's boots felt heavier than usual as he walked down Willow Street. A thin layer of fog draped the houses, swallowing sound and turning everything into soft silhouettes. Something in the air felt wrong, not dangerous, just expectant, like the quiet before a curtain rises. He reached the old man's porch and paused. Normally, Mr. Alden waited outside, wrapped in his wool coat, cane tapping lightly against the steps. But today the porch was empty, still, and strangely cold as if the air had been rearranged. "Mr. Alden?" Ethan called gently. No answer. He stepped closer and knocked. The sound echoed too loudly in the quiet morning. Before he could knock again, he heard voices, low, stern, and unfamiliar, coming from inside. The door opened abruptly. A tall man in a dark charcoal suit stood in the doorway. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable, and behind him stood two massive bodyguards dressed in black, their shoulders nearly scraping the doorframe. Their presence radiated authority or intimidation. Maybe both. Ethan froze. I'm just here to help Mr. Alden get to the bakery." The suited man studied him for a long moment. "You must be Ethan Cole." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Yeah, and you are?" "We're Mr. Alden's legal team." Legal team? For a man who lived in a crumbling house and bought a single bread roll each morning? Before Ethan could ask anything else, another voice floated from deeper inside the house. Tired, raspy, but familiar. "Let him in." It was Mr. Alden. The lawyer stepped aside, and Ethan entered, feeling the weight of the bodyguard's eyes follow him. Inside, the house felt strangely transformed. Papers were spread across the table. Documents, folders, signatures half complete. The old man sat in his recliner, blanket over his lap, his cane lying uselessly at his side. His face looked paler today, smaller somehow. "I'm sorry for the dramatic entrance," Mr. Alden murmured, motioning Ethan closer. "I didn't expect all this." Ethan leaned down. "Are you okay?" "You weren't outside." "I had a rough night," he admitted quietly. "The doctors warned me things might get worse before they get better." Ethan's chest tightened. "You should have called me. I could have come sooner." A soft, weary smile flickered on the old man's lips. "You already do more than anyone ever has." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "Mr. Alden, you wanted to speak with him. We can step outside." "No," Mr. Alden said firmly. "They stay. What I'm about to say involves them, and you." Ethan lowered himself onto the arm of the sofa, confused. "What's going on?" Mr. Alden took a slow breath, gathering strength like someone lifting a heavy memory. "Ethan, you don't know the whole truth about me. I'm not just an old man living alone on a small pension." He paused, eyes drifting toward the window, as if watching a younger version of himself walk by. "I built a company once. A big one. Bigger than I ever meant for it to be." Ethan blinked. "What? But your house?" "I abandoned it all years ago," Mr. Alden said, voice cracking. "Money, status, family, every bit of it slipped through my fingers." Have you ever had someone step into your life in a moment you didn't expect, and suddenly everything changed? If yes, tell me who they were. Maybe gratitude still has a place to land. He shifted uncomfortably, the blanket rustling. "My wife died. My son blamed me. I blamed myself. I didn't want wealth. I didn't want lawyers. I wanted to disappear in a small place where no one cared about my name." Ethan swallowed, suddenly understanding the loneliness he'd seen in the old man's eyes each morning. "But then," Mr. Alden whispered, "you showed up. I didn't do anything special. Ethan said softly. "I just help you down the hill." "You notice me," the old man corrected. "And that matters more than you think." One of the lawyers stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "Mr. Alden requested we finalize several documents today. He insisted we speak with you before proceeding." Ethan frowned. "Why would you need me?" But before the lawyer answered, Mr. Alden reached for Ethan's hand, thin, trembling fingers curling around his. "Because everything I have left, everything I walked away from, I want to put it into hands that won't waste it. A heart that's already proven itself." Ethan's pulse pounded. "Mr. Alden, I don't understand. You will—" The old man's eyes glistened, and for the first time, Ethan saw not frailty but fear. Fear of being rejected, of being misunderstood, of asking too much. "But not yet. First, I need you to do what you always do. Help me get to the bakery." Ethan looked at the lawyers, the bodyguards, the documents, the confusion twisting through him like tangled wire, then back at the old man whose world suddenly seemed much larger than his small house suggested. "Of course," Ethan whispered. "Let's get you there." He knelt, ready for the familiar weight on his back. But as Mr. Alden shifted to climb onto him, a sharp gasp escaped his lips and his body collapsed sideways. Ethan lunged forward and caught Mr. Alden just before he hit the hardwood floor. The old man's breast shuddered against Ethan's arm, shallow and trembling. One of the bodyguards moved quickly to support his shoulders, while the lawyer stepped back, expression tight with concern rather than corporate distance. "Easy, easy," Ethan whispered, lowering him gently into the recliner. "What happened? Did your hip give out again?" But Ethan already knew it wasn't just the hip. The way Mr. Alden winced, clutching the left side of his chest. It was something deeper, something that had been brewing his bones far longer than the fall that left him limping. "I'm fine," Mr. Alden rasped, though the strain in his voice betrayed him. "Just stood too fast." "You didn't stand at all," Ethan said softly. The old man let out a weak chuckle. "Then I suppose I fell too fast." The bodyguards exchanged a glance, and one murmured something to the lawyer, but Ethan barely noticed. His focus was fixed on the old man's face. The pallor, the thin sheen of sweat gathering at his temples, the way his fingers trembled against the blanket. "You need a hospital," Ethan said firmly. "No." The refusal was immediate, forceful despite the weakness behind it. "Not yet. I have things to finish." Ethan's brows tightened. "Nothing is more important than your health." But Mr. Alden reached up and touched Ethan's wrist. Even frail, his grip carried meaning. "Some things are," he whispered. "Some truths need to be spoken before time decides otherwise." A heavy silence filled the room, not tense but layered, thick with unspoken history. The lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Alden, we can postpone the signing." "Your health." "No," he interrupted. "We continue. But first, let me catch my breath." Ethan pulled a chair closer and sat beside him, eyes tracing every rise and fall of the old man's chest. After a minute, Mr. Alden's breathing evened slightly. Not enough to reassure anyone, but enough to speak. "Ethan," he said softly, "do you know what surprised me most when I met you?" Ethan shook his head. That a young father with the world weighing on his shoulders still had enough strength left to carry someone else. Ethan looked down at his hands, callous and cracked. "I didn't think about it. You needed help. That's all. Most people don't help unless someone's watching," Mr. Alden murmured. "But you help because that's who you are." A warm ache spread across Ethan's chest. He didn't feel like a good man most days. He felt tired, overwhelmed, one unpaid bill away from breaking. "Now it's your turn," the narration softened, drifting to the quiet room. "Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below. Not to boast, but to remind others that gentleness still exists. Your story might be the spark someone needs tonight." Mr. Alden let his head fall back against the recliner, eyes half closing. "When I was young," he continued, "I thought success was measured in how high you climbed. But standing on top of the world means nothing if there's no one beside you to see the view." He exhaled shakily. "My son grew up in the shadow of my ambition. He wanted time. I gave him gifts. He wanted a father. I gave him a schedule. By the time I realized, he'd stopped asking. Ethan felt something shift inside him. A resonance, painful and familiar. Is that why you left everything? Yes. The word cracked like old wood. Regret is a stubborn companion. Ethan, it follows you for miles. The room stayed still, as though even the walls were listening. Does your son know you're sick? Ethan asked gently. Mr. Alden shook his head. He hasn't returned a call in years. He doesn't know where I live. And part of me believed I deserved the distance. Ethan swallowed. He thought of Lily, how she'd wrap her arms around his neck each night, trusting him with a simplicity that scared him sometimes. He tried so hard to be everything for her. But what if someday she looked at him the way Mr. Alden's son looked at his father, as if disappointment could become a language? You're trying your best, Ethan murmured. Mr. Alden opened his eyes again, glassy and fragile. So were you? That morning you found me on the ground. Ethan recalled the moment vividly. The old man sprawled halfway down the hill, cane rolling away, cars passing without slowing. Ethan had set down the bag of groceries he struggled to afford and climbed the hill, helping him up despite knowing he'd be late for work. Again. It was nothing, Ethan whispered. It was everything, Mr. Alden replied. A cough tore through his chest, violent and wrenching. Ethan reached for him immediately, steadying him until the fit subsided. The lawyer stepped forward again. We should call a doctor. Mr. Alden waved a dismissive hand. Not yet. Just give me a moment. But Ethan could see it now. The truth behind the old man's stubbornness. He wasn't avoiding help. He was racing against something he hadn't named out loud yet. Let's just sit a minute, Ethan said. They stayed like that. Ethan at his side, the lawyers waiting with quiet urgency, the bodyguards unmoving pillars near the door, until Mr. Alden's breathing steadied enough for him to speak again. Ethan, the old man whispered, voice thin as paper. There's something I need to ask you before anything else is signed. He lifted trembling eyes to Ethan. Will you promise me something? Ethan leaned closer, tried to read the emotion behind Mr. Alden's trembling eyes. They weren't just tired. They were pleading, the kind of gaze a person gives when holding on to something heavier than their body can bear. What do you need me to promise? Ethan asked quietly. The old man swallowed, the motion strained. Promise me. You won't walk away when you hear what I'm about to tell you. Ethan blinked. Why would I walk away? Because people have, Mr. Alden whispered. And because this truth doesn't pay me kindly. One of the lawyers shifted uncomfortably, as if he knew what was coming but wished he didn't have to be in the room when it arrived. The bodyguard stayed still, statues and suits. Ethan's heart thudded once, hard. Whatever it is, just tell me. Mr. Alden closed his eyes for a moment, as though gathering scattered pieces of courage. The reason I left my company, the reason my son won't speak to me, it isn't just because I work too much. Ethan waited, breath held. It's because, the old man continued slowly, painfully, I made decisions that hurt people. Real people. Families like yours. Ethan's brows knit. What do you mean? My company, the one I built, it wasn't just tech and contracts. It dealt in acquisitions, buyouts, and some of those deals, his voice cracked. Some destroyed livelihoods. The words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't fade. I never meant harm, Mr. Alden said, gripping Ethan's sleeve with thin, desperate fingers. But intent doesn't erase impact. I hid behind growth charts and quarterly reports, thinking numbers were just numbers. But behind every failed competitor was a home that lost its income, a parent who came home with empty hands. He turned his face away, ashamed. My son called me a thief. A destroyer wearing a suit. And maybe he wasn't wrong. Ethan felt a chill settle under his ribs. He didn't know what he expected. Maybe a hidden fortune, a lost family, a secret illness, but not this. Not the confession of a man whose own success had carved wounds into the world. And the worst part, Mr. Alden whispered, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. I didn't realize the cost until the day my wife died. She used to beg me to slow down, to see the people behind the papers. But I didn't listen. And by the time I wanted to change, Everyone I loved had already walked away. A heavy silence swept through the room, not judgment, but grief. The lawyer cleared his throat gently. "Mr. Alden, you don't have to force yourself through all of this right now." But the old man shook his head. "He deserves to know. He deserves a chance to walk out before I put anything in writing." Ethan stared at him. This fragile man who once commanded boardrooms and empires, now unraveling in a small recliner with a blanket tucked around his legs. "Why tell me this?" Ethan finally asked, voice faint. "Because you're the best person I met in decades," Mr. Alden whispered. "And if I leave you anything at all, I need you to accept it knowing the full truth. Not thinking I was a saint. I wasn't. I'm still not." Ethan felt something shift inside him. Disappointment? No. Something heavier. Something more complex. The kind of feeling that mixes sorrow and understanding until they're impossible to separate. Mr. Alden wiped at his cheek with the back of his trembling hand. "I want to make amends before I die, Ethan. I want to put what's left of my life into repairing what I broke. And maybe you could use some of that to build something better for Lily. Something clean. Something good." The old man's voice cracked again. "But I understand if you can't accept anything from a man who once ruined so much." The room felt suddenly smaller, as though the walls had leaned in to hear Ethan's response. Ethan didn't speak right away. He couldn't. He looked at the old man, at the regret bleeding through every wrinkle, every breath, every word, and wondered how much one person could carry alone for so long. A soft whisper threaded through the moment, meant for the viewers listening to the story. If that moment hit you deep, leave a red heart. Sometimes one small symbol says the things our voices struggle to express. Ethan finally exhaled, slow and heavy. "Mr. Alden, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything yet," the old man murmured. "Just stay." Ethan nodded. The lawyer stepped forward with cautious respect. "Mr. Alden, should we proceed with the next document or give you more time?" But the old man didn't answer. His breast shuddered, his eyes briefly unfocused, as though a shadow passed over his consciousness. "Mr. Alden?" Ethan leaned closer. The old man blinked rapidly, struggling to anchor himself in the present. "I'm fine," he whispered. "Just dizzy." A subtle tremor moved through his hand. Something was changing, and not in a way anyone wanted. "Maybe we should take him to the hospital now," Ethan urged. But before anyone could decide, a frantic knock pounded at the front door. Sharp, urgent, nothing like the measured authority of the lawyers. Everyone froze. The nearest bodyguard stepped forward, opening the door just enough to see who stood outside. His expression, usually unreadable, flickered. "There's someone here asking for you, sir," the bodyguard announced. Ethan frowned. "For me?" The old man's eyes widened faintly, as though he recognized something none of them could see. "Let them in," he rasped. The door opened fully, and standing in the doorway was a face Ethan never expected to see. A woman stood in the doorway, breathless, cheeks flushed from running through the cold morning air. Her dark hair clung to her forehead, and her eyes, wide, urgent, shining with something close to panic, darted across the room until they landed squarely on Ethan. "Dad, thank God." Ethan froze. It felt like the house itself paused with him. The woman rushed forward, pulling him into a hug so sudden and desperate his arms hovered uselessly in the air before instinct forced him to wrap around her. "Ava." Ethan breathed, shock rippling through his body. His sister. The sister who'd vanished from his life nearly 4 years ago after a brutal family argument. The one who'd left without a forwarding address, without a phone number, with only a torn goodbye letter shoved under his door the night she walked out. She pulled back, her eyes glassy. "I've been calling your old number for days. None of your emails went through. I didn't know where you lived now. But when someone at the shelter mentioned seeing you around Willow Street, her voice cracked. I came as fast as I could." Ethan stared, his brain scrambling to catch up. "Ava, why now?" Before she could answer, she finally noticed Mr. Alden in the recliner, pale and trembling, her brows furrowed, confusion flickering across her face. "Is he okay? Should I call someone?" The old man offered a tired smile. We've had a morning. Ava looked between Ethan and the lawyers, then the bodyguards, trying to assemble context like scattered puzzle pieces. Ethan, what is going on here? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Too many threads pulled at him at once. Ava's sudden return, Mr. Alden's failing health, the unfinished confession still hanging like fog in the air. Ava gently squeezed his arm. I'm here. Just tell me. But he couldn't, not yet. Instead, he motioned toward the chair beside Mr. Alden. We should help him first. Ava nodded slowly and moved closer, kneeling beside the old man. Sir, do you need water? Medicine? Anything? Mr. Alden studied her with surprising softness. You're Ethan's daughter? Ava's eyes widened. Oh, no. I'm his sister. Ah. The old man smiled faintly. I see the resemblance. The same worry lines. The same stubborn kindness. Ava blinked, taken off guard by the strange, tender remark. She glanced at Ethan, seeking explanation, but Ethan only exhaled shakily. The room settled into a fragile quiet. Finally, Ava whispered, Ethan, why didn't you tell me things were this bad? You should have called me. He looked down at his hands. You left, Ava. She winced visibly. I know, and I regret it every day. Emotion prickled behind Ethan's ribs, sharp and unwelcome. He didn't have the strength for this conversation. Not while Mr. Alden struggled to breathe across the room. Ava turned to the old man again. Sir, you should be lying down. Your color's not good. Mr. Alden chuckled weakly. My dear, my color hasn't been good since 1994. But the joke dissolved quickly. His chest tightened, breath hitching. Ethan rubbed his back gently, feeling the tremor beneath the frail bones. One of the lawyers spoke carefully. Mr. Alden, we truly recommend postponing the rest of today's proceedings. The old man shook his head, but even that small motion drained him. Time isn't a luxury I've left. Ava's concern deepened into something heavier. She looked at Ethan. Whatever this is, it feels serious. It is, he said quietly. She reached for his hand. Then tell me how to help. Her voice had softened. Not the cold edge she carried the day she disappeared. This was the Ava he remembered from childhood. The one who patched his scraped knees and sang Lily to sleep. The one who promised they'd always face things together. Ethan hadn't realized how much he missed her until this moment. A whisper threaded through the story, meant for the audience, gentle as a hand placed on a heart. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if the wound is still too deep. Ava sat back on her heels, eyes returning to Mr. Alden. Shouldn't someone call for medical help? Soon, the old man murmured, but not before I finished speaking to Ethan. Ethan leaned in, voice barely audible. Mr. Alden, maybe this isn't the moment. It's exactly the moment, he insisted. If I don't say this now, I may not say it at all. His eyes glistened, reflecting a lifetime of mistakes and a small flame of courage. Ava watched, silent and attentive. The lawyer quietly placed the folder back onto the small table, stepping aside. Mr. Alden reached weakly for Ethan's hand again, and Ethan immediately took it, stabilizing the trembling fingers with his own. What I am giving you, the old man whispered, is not just money or assets. It's a chance to repair what I destroyed, to change a story that never should have ended the way it did. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Mr. Alden, but there's something more, he said, swallowing painfully. Something you need to know before you accept anything from me. A chill spread through the room. What is it? Ethan asked, barely above a whisper. Mr. Alden looked at him with a sorrow so raw it seemed to bend the air around them. It's about your sister. Ava stiffened instantly. Ethan froze. The room held its breath. Mr. Alden's voice broke as he spoke the words that would unravel everything. I knew her long before you realized. Ava blinked, stunned. You knew me? How? Mr. Alden's fingers tightened around Ethan's hand with the last reserves of his strength. His voice trembled like a fraying thread. Not as the woman you are today, but as the girl who sat outside my old corporate building, waiting for her father to come home. Ethan felt his stomach drop, Ava went pale. No, no, that can't be. Mr. Alden nodded slowly, painfully. Your father worked for me 30 years ago. He was one of the people affected by one of my worst decisions. The room stilled as though the air itself thickened. I didn't know then, Mr. Alden whispered. Not until years later. Not until your father's file crossed my desk again, because he filed a claim, one that never reached me the way it should have. It was buried, mishandled, ignored, and families like yours suffered for it. Ava covered her mouth with a trembling hand. Our father, he lost everything because of a layoff your company caused. Ethan's voice cracked open, raw. He stopped laughing after that. He stopped hoping. Mr. Alden nodded, tears slipping down his lined cheeks. And I didn't know. Not truly. Not personally. Not until it was too late to fix it for him. A sharp memory stabbed through Ethan. Their father sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread like broken wings, whispering apologies to children who couldn't understand why the lights flickered at night, why the fridge was empty, why kindness felt like a borrowed thing they couldn't afford to lose. Ava's breaths came uneven, edges sharp. So you're telling us you destroyed our father's job, and now you want to help us as some kind of apology? Ethan flinched at the bitterness in her voice, but he couldn't blame her. It echoed the storm building inside him too. Mr. Alden didn't protest. He didn't defend himself. He simply whispered, I deserve your anger. Ava stood abruptly, pacing as if her skin had become too tight. This is insane. Ethan, you can't just sit here and... Ava, Ethan said gently, though his own voice shook. He didn't know, and he's trying to fix what he can. She spun toward him, hurt blazing in her eyes. You're defending him? I'm trying to understand. His voice broke on the word. Mr. Alden leaned back, exhausted. I looked for your father years later, but by then, the trail was broken. People move. Records get lost. And I didn't know he'd pass away. I didn't know he left behind 2 children who carried the weight of my failure. Tears shimmered in Ava's eyes. You took everything from us. The old man's voice barely escaped his lips. I know. And now you want to give us what? She whispered. His stolen fortune? His guilt? His legacy? No, Mr. Alden said, shaking his head weakly. I want to give you the chance your father deserved. And the truth, the real truth. So you don't spend your whole life thinking he was the one who failed. The words hit Ethan in the chest like a punch. All those nights he blamed their father. For lost jobs. For eviction notices. For empty cupboards. None of it had been his fault. It had been the decisions of a man sitting in a glass tower who never saw the families on the ground. Ethan felt the room tilt, a heaviness rising in his throat. Ava wiped her tears with the back of her sleeve. Why tell us now? Because I don't have much time left, Mr. Alden whispered, breath rattling. And because your father deserved justice that never came. If I can give even a piece of that to his children, then maybe my story doesn't end in complete ruin. A long, aching silence followed. Ava slowly sank into the chair opposite Ethan, covering her face as quiet sobs shook her shoulders. Ethan reached out, hesitated, then gently rested his hand on her arm. She didn't pull away. The room softened, not healed, not yet, but breathing again. And in that fragile breath, a quiet voice drifted to the viewers listening. If you believe love still wins, even after pain, even through broken histories, comment and men. Hope might feel small, but sometimes small things carry the brightest light. Ava lowered her hands, eyes red but clearer now. So what happens next? Mr. Alden struggled to sit straighter. Ethan immediately helped him adjust the blankets. The old man's chest rose and fell shallowly, each breath a labor, but determination still shimmered faintly behind his eyes. What happens next, he whispered, is that I put what remains of my life into your hands. Not out of pity, but out of responsibility. Ethan swallowed hard. What are you saying? I am leaving my estate, everything, to you and Ava. Equally. Ava jerked upright. No, absolutely not. We can't accept. It's not a gift. Mr. Alden's voice sharpened, though it trembled. It's restitution. It's rewriting a story that never should have gone this way. And you think money fixes that? Ava whispered. No, he said gently, but it can repair the damage left behind. And maybe it can free you from the struggles your father should never have faced alone. Ethan rubbed his palms together, battling the storm inside. This is too much. It's the bare minimum, Mr. Alden said softly. The very least I can offer. A soft coughing fit overtook him, his frail body curling inward. Ethan steadied him immediately. Ava, despite her anger, reached for water and held the cup to his lips. When the coughing eased, Mr. Alden closed his eyes, drained. We can discuss details later, the lawyer murmured. You need rest. But Mr. Alden shook his head faintly. One more thing. I need to. His breath caught. His hand slipped from Ethan's. Ava gasped, stepping closer. Sir? Sir. Ethan's heart lurched. Mr. Alden, stay with me. But his eyes were open only halfway. Unfocused. Fading. Call an ambulance, Ethan shouted. A bodyguard immediately grabbed his phone. Ava held the old man's trembling hand. The old man gathered one last breath. Please, don't let my story end like this. His voice thinned to a whisper. Forgive me, both of you, and his head slumped forward. For a moment, the room lost every sound except the desperate beating of Ethan's heart. Mr. Alden's head hung forward, his frail chest barely lifting beneath the blanket. Ava's breath hitched as she clutched his hand, and even the bodyguards, towering pillars moments ago, seemed frozen helpless. Sir, stay with us, the lawyer urged, kneeling beside the recliner with trembling hands. Ethan leaned in, his voice cracking. Mr. Alden, can you hear me? Just breathe. Come on, stay with me. A faint exhale fluttered past the old man's lips, but his eyes remained closed, his face drained of every last trace of color. The bodyguard on the phone barked instructions urgently to the dispatcher, then paced toward the door, preparing to guide the ambulance in. Ava wiped her tears with shaking fingers. He can't die like this. Not now. Not after everything he just said. Ethan felt a painful heaviness settle in his chest. We don't know if he's gone. He might just be unconscious. But the tremor in his own voice betrayed him. Minutes stretched like hours until the distant wail of sirens sliced through the quiet morning. The sound grew louder, filling the neighborhood with an urgent pulse. When the paramedics burst through the door, they moved quickly, lifting Mr. Alden onto a stretcher, placing an oxygen mask over his face, checking vitals with practiced precision. One of them glanced up, meeting Ethan's eyes with a grim expression. He has a pulse, but it's weak. We need to move now. Ava stepped back, pressing her hand against her mouth. Ethan moved beside the stretcher instinctively, as though leaving the old man's side for even a second might break something delicate and irreparable. The paramedics pushed the stretcher toward the waiting ambulance. The lawyers followed close behind, speaking quietly but urgently, while the bodyguards flanked the group to clear a path. As the stretcher was loaded, rain began to fall, a light drizzle at first, then heavier, as though the sky had been waiting for permission to break. A paramedic called. Only one family member can ride with him. Ethan and Ava exchanged a look, hearts torn. You go, Ava whispered, voice tight. You're the one he asked for. Ava? Go, Ethan, she insisted. Please. He nodded, squeezing her arm before climbing into the ambulance. The door slammed shut, and within seconds, they were speeding down the road, sirens echoing through the wet streets. Inside, the ambulance lights painted everything in pulses of red and white. Ethan sat gripping the rail beside the stretcher, his breathing uneven, eyes fixed on the old man's fragile frame beneath the blanket. Hang in there, he whispered. Don't leave yet. Not like this. The paramedic checking vitals murmured. He's fighting. Some people have stronger spirits than their bodies. Ethan swallowed hard, emotion choking him. He has things left to say. Well, the medic replied softly, then maybe he'll stay to say them. The city blurred past the windows in streaks of rain and color. Every bump in the road jolted Mr. Alden's frail body slightly, but Ethan kept a hand brace above him, as if shielding him could somehow keep him tethered to the world. When they reached the hospital, automatic doors slid open with a hiss as paramedics rushed him inside. Ethan followed close, heart pounding. Nurses moved swiftly, hooking monitors to his chest, inserting for lines, adjusting oxygen levels, speaking in clipped but calm tones. A doctor appeared, scanning the chart. He's stable for now. We'll take him for imaging, blood work. Please wait outside. Ethan hesitated, eyes glued to the old man's still form. We'll update you, the doctor promised gently. A nurse placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's elbow, guiding him away. Outside the room, the hallway lights flickered softly, casting a pale glow over worn chairs and polished floors. Ethan sank into one of the seats, elbows resting on his knees, face buried in his hands. Rain tapped against the windows in rhythmic patterns, like an echo of a heartbeat that refused to give up. Minutes passed, then footsteps approached. Ava. She slid into the chair beside him, breath unsteady, cheeks wet, whether from tears or rain. Ethan couldn't tell. He's alive, Ethan whispered. Ava nodded, eyes closing briefly. I heard. One of the bodyguards drove me here. Silence settled between them, not angry, not cold, just full of things too heavy to say out loud. Finally, Ava spoke quietly. Do you want him to make it? Ethan's throat tightened. Yes, I do. Even after what he did? He's not that man anymore, Ethan murmured. And he tried to make it right. That has to mean something. A tear slipped down Ava's cheek. Maybe you're the better one between us. He shook his head. No, just tired of holding on to pain. Ava rested her head lightly against his shoulder, something she hadn't done since they were kids. I hate what happened to Dad. I hate everything we went through. But part of me doesn't want this old man dying with that much guilt in his chest. Me too, Ethan whispered. A soft glow from the hallway window reflected off the wet streets outside, city lights shimmering like tiny prayers. If you believe people can still find their way back to the light, even after years of darkness, right? And man, someone scrolling right now might need to see a little hope. A nurse approached them with a clipboard. He's asking for you. Ava and Ethan jolted upright. He's awake. Ethan asked. Yes, the nurse said with a gentle smile. Weak but conscious. He said he needs both of you before he rests. Ava exhaled shakily, gripping Ethan's hand. They stood. They walked. And as they stepped toward the room where Mr. Alden lay waiting, Ethan felt the weight of the future settling over his shoulders, heavy, uncertain, but no longer hopeless. What came next would change more than just their lives. It would change his. Ethan and Ava stepped into the dim hospital room, their footsteps soft against the polished floor. Machines hummed in gentle rhythms, screens casting pale glows across the walls. Rain streaked the window behind the hospital bed, each drop sliding slowly, as if time itself had softened to match the fragile heartbeat in the room. Mr. Alden lay propped up by pillows, oxygen tube resting beneath his nose, his thin chest rising in small, deliberate breaths. But his eyes, though tired, shone with a clarity neither of them expected. There you are, he whispered, voice gravelly but warm. Ethan moved closer. Ava hovered near the door for a moment before slowly approaching the bed, her fingers twisting anxiously. I'm glad you're awake, Ethan said softly. Mr. Alden smiled faintly. So am I? I wasn't ready to leave the world with unsaid words hanging in the air. Loose threads trouble an old man more than illness. Ava swallowed hard. Why did you ask for us? Because, he murmured, I need to finish what I started. He motioned for them both to sit. Ethan took the chair on the right. Ava hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair on the left, her expression guarded but open. Mr. Alden looked at her first. I knew your father was one of the men my decisions hurt, but I didn't know he was your father. Not until I recognized your eyes the day I saw you outside the shelter years ago. Ava stiffened. You saw me? When? You were handing out blankets. You had this determined look. He smiled gently. The same look your father had the day he interviewed for the job he later lost. Ava's breath caught. Why didn't you say anything? Because shame is a cage, he whispered, and I lived in it far too long. I didn't know how to approach you without reopening old wounds. He turned his gaze to Ethan. And then one morning, you carried me down a hill without hesitation. A stranger with broken bones, carried by a man with more weight on his shoulders than he ever admitted. Ethan felt his face heat, but he didn't look away. You saved me, Mr. Alden said softly, long before the hospital did. A few seconds passed before he continued, voice weakening. I want both of you to understand, what I leave behind isn't charity. It's responsibility. A debt long overdue. And I truly believe, you can turn it into something beautiful. Something your father would have been proud of. Ava's eyes filled again, but this time they weren't sharp with anger. They were soft, uncertain, opening. Sir, she whispered, I don't know if I can forgive everything. Not yet. The old man nodded slowly. Forgiveness isn't a door that swings open. It's a knob you turn a little more each day. Ethan felt the words settle inside him like warm stones. The rain outside softened, turning into a gentle drizzle that tapped lightly against the window. Steady, soothing, as though the world itself leaned in to listen. Ava reached out tentatively and placed her hand atop Mr. Alden's frail fingers. We'll try, she whispered, for Dad and for ourselves. Mr. Alden's eyes glistened. That's all I ever hoped for. His breathing grew slower, deeper, as though relief allowed him to finally rest. Ethan watched the old man settle, lids drooping, but still awake enough to hold on to the moment. A quiet voice drifted to the viewers, soft as a closing curtain. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the man who carried his guilt alone for far too long. One small gesture can be your way of saying, I hear you, your story mattered. Mr. Alden tightened his grip, weakly on both their hands. There's just one more thing, he whispered, eyes unfocused as though he were seeing a memory painted on the far wall. Promise me, whatever you build with what I leave, you build it together. Ethan and Ava exchanged a look, a long, meaningful one that bridged years of distance. We promise, they said softly in unison. A peaceful smile lifted the corners of the old man's mouth. Good, that's good. His eyelids fluttered closed as his breathing evened into quiet, steady waves. A nurse peeked inside, checking monitors, then nodded reassuringly. He's just sleeping, she whispered. He's stable for now. Relief washed through Ethan like warm wind after a storm. Ava leaned back in her chair, wiping tears and laughing softly through them. He scared us. Twice. Ethan exhaled shakily, letting the chair support him. He's stubborn. Just like you, Ava teased gently. He nudged her knee with his. You're back. She swallowed, nodding slowly. Yeah, I think I am. They sat in the soft glow of the hospital lights, listening to the steady beeps and gentle rain, a quiet peace settling between them, a peace that felt long overdue. Outside, the storm weakened into mist. Inside, healing began in a small, fragile way, but it was real. And as Ethan looked at his sister, at the old man resting between them, he finally understood the story's truth. Broken things can be rebuilt. Lost people can be found. And sometimes, the weight we carry becomes lighter the moment we choose not to carry alone. Kindness doesn't erase the past, but it can rewrite the future. And forgiveness, slow as it may be, is a quiet bridge that lets two hurting hearts meet in the middle again.